The light on Route 19 stayed red longer than it should have, and Daniel Carter felt every second of it in his spine. The pickup behind him crept close enough that he could see the driver's knuckles on the wheel, white with impatience. Daniel's fingers tightened. He reminded himself to breathe, to think of his daughter's backpack waiting by the door, the promise he'd made to be home before dinner. The horn exploded, long accusing. Daniel eased forward with traffic, signaling, doing everything right. The pickup surged anyway, engine growling, a flag decal snapping the wind. The driver leaned out and shouted something sharp, ugly, words meant to land. Daniel didn't answer. He stared ahead, jaw locked, choosing quiet over escalation. At the next light, the pickup cut in front of him and slammed the brakes. Coffee spilled. Tires screamed. Daniel stopped inches short of metal. The driver jumped out, boots striking asphalt like punctuation. "Say it to my face," the man yelled. Daniel kept his hands visible. "I don't want trouble," he said, voice steady because he forced it to be. He cracked the window, just enough to speak. The man smiled without warmth. "People like you always think you're entitled. Learn your place." Then the siren chirped. A patrol car rolled in, lights flashing once. Relief flickered through Daniel. He raised his hands. The pickup driver stepped back, palms up, innocence performed for an audience. The officer walked past the pickup and stopped at Daniel's door. License and registration. The red light still burned. Phones lifted, and as the officer told him to step out of the car, Daniel felt the day tilt, his ordinary commute turning into something else, something that would not let him go. Morning traffic on Route 19 moved like a hell breath. Daniel Carter gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, eyes flicking between the brake lights ahead and the rear-view mirror. The sedan behind him rode too close, its grille filling the glass. Daniel eased forward, cautious, remembering the safety lecture from work, remembering his daughter's laugh when he promised to be home early. The horn blared, long accusatory. Daniel muttered, "I'm moving," though no one could hear. He signaled, merged, and felt the other car surge again, a white pickup with a flag decal curling at the tailgate. The driver leaned out, jaw tight, mouth working. Daniel kept his gaze forward. "Breathe. Don't react." The pickup swerved alongside, windows down. The man shouted something sharp and ugly, words cutting through traffic noise. Daniel's chest tightened. He shook his head once, a small refusal, and pointed ahead, traffic. Nothing personal. The man laughed, short and mean. At the next light, everything stopped. The pickup cut in front of Daniel, brake checking hard. Coffee sloshed. Tires squealed. Daniel slammed to a halt, heart thudding. The light stayed red. The driver jumped out, boots hitting asphalt, body already coiled. "Say it to my face," the man yelled. Daniel stayed seated, hands visible on the wheel. "I don't want trouble," he said, voice steady because he forced it to be. He cracked the window an inch. The man stepped closer. "People like you always think you're entitled," the man said. He smiled without warmth. "Learn your place." That was when the siren chirped. A patrol car rolled up fast, lights flashing once, twice. Relief washed through Daniel, thin and hopeful. He raised both hands. The pickup driver backed away, palms up, performing innocence. The officer approached Daniel first. Sunglasses, clipped stride. "License and registration," he said, tone flat. Daniel complied, careful. "He cut me off," Daniel said quietly. He got out of his truck. The officer didn't look at the pickup, step out of the vehicle. Daniel hesitated. "Sir, now." As Daniel opened the door, the pickup driver smirked. The officer's hand hovered near his holster. Traffic crept past, faces turned away. Somewhere, a phone camera lifted. Daniel felt the day tilt, a simple commute turning into something else, something dangerous. "Hands on the hood," the officer said. Daniel complied, palms flat against warm metal. The paint gritty with road dust. The smell of oil and hot rubber hung in the air. He kept his feet planted, shoulder width apart, exactly how he'd seen it done 100 times on the news. "Don't move. Don't argue. Don't give them a reason." The officer stepped close, too close. Daniel felt the presence before the touch, the pause that stretched just long enough to be a decision. Spread your legs. Daniel did. The asphalt pressed through the soles of his shoes. A truck honked somewhere behind them, impatient, annoyed at the delay. Life moving on. What seems to be the problem, officer? Daniel asked, keeping his voice neutral. The officer didn't answer. His hands moved briskly, patting Daniel down with professional efficiency that somehow still felt personal. Pockets, waistband, ankles. The officer lingered at Daniel's back pocket, fingers pressing harder than necessary. Do you have anything on you I should know about? The officer asked. No, sir. Any weapons? No, sir. The officer stepped back. Turn around. Daniel turned. The sun hit his eyes, forcing a squint, across the hood of the pickup. The other driver leaned casually, arms crossed, face arranged into concern. He shook his head slowly, like a disappointed witness. The officer glanced at him. You okay, sir? Yes, officer, the man said quickly. This guy was driving aggressively, tailgating me. Then he started yelling. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. That's not true, he said. He cut me off. He got out his truck. The officer's eyes snapped back to Daniel. I didn't ask you. Daniel closed his mouth, swallowed. The officer nodded at the pickup driver. You can sit tight for a moment. The man nodded back, grateful, protected. The officer turned to Daniel again. You fit the description of someone involved in a disturbance reported a few blocks back. What description? Daniel asked before he could stop himself. The officer's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. Daniel exhaled slowly. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. What's happening, the officer said, is I'm conducting an investigation. Standard procedure. Standard procedure. The words landed heavy, final, like a door closing. Am I being detained? Daniel asked. The officer paused, just a fraction too long. Right now, you're being held for questioning. So yes, Daniel said softly. The officer stepped closer again. If you keep talking, this will go a lot harder for you. Behind them, someone's phone chimed. Daniel heard the faint click of a camera focusing. He stared past the officer's shoulder, at nothing, at everything. He thought of his daughter's face when she lost a tooth, how she laughed and cried at the same time. Please, Daniel said. I didn't do anything. The officer sighed, like a man burdened by inconvenience. License says you live on Pinecrest. Yes, sir. You ever been arrested before? No. Any warrants? No. The officer looked unconvinced. He turned to his patrol car, tapped something into the computer. Minutes passed. The red light finally changed. Traffic flowed again, faster now, like water around a stone. The pickup driver called out, Am I free to go, officer? Not yet, the officer said. His eyes stayed on the screen. Just hang tight. Daniel watched the man smile, watched him look at his phone, thumbs flying, telling someone. Anyone. The officer returned. Step over here, he said, gesturing toward the patrol car. Daniel hesitated. Do I need a lawyer? The officer laughed once, sharp. For what? You're not under arrest. Daniel moved anyway. He stood beside the cruiser, hands clasped in front of him, making himself small. Here's how this works, the officer said. We had a call about aggressive driving. I arrive, and I see you visibly upset. You refuse commands. That raises concerns. I didn't refuse. The officer held up a finger. You interrupted. Again. Daniel fell silent. The officer continued, voice smooth now. The other driver feels threatened. That matters. Public safety matters. What about me? Daniel asked, the words slipping out. The officer looked at him for a long moment. Something unreadable crossed his face. Then it was gone. You're going to sit in the back of my car for a few minutes while I sort this out, the officer said. That's for everyone's safety. Daniel stared at the open back door. The plastic seat gleamed in the sunlight, empty and waiting. Am I under arrest? He asked again. No, the officer said. But if you don't comply, you will be. Daniel nodded. He bent, slid into the back seat. The door closed with a final mechanical thud. The lock clicked. From inside, the world looked distorted through thick glass. He saw the officer laugh with the pickup driver, a friendly clap on the shoulder. The driver pointed at Daniel's car, animated, confident. Daniel pressed his forehead lightly to the window. His breath fogged the glass, then cleared. Standard procedure, he thought, and for the first time, he understood how small that phrase could make a life feel. Daniel didn't know how long he sat in the back of the patrol car. Time stretched, thinned, lost its edges. The radio crackled with codes he didn't understand. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and old heat. He kept his hands on his knees, fingers interlaced, still as a promise. When the door finally opened, the officer didn't meet his eyes. "You're free to go," he said. This time, Daniel stepped out carefully. "Am I getting a ticket?" The officer shook his head. "Consider this a warning. Drive safe." The pickup driver was already gone. Daniel drove home with his jaw clenched, the road blurring under his tires. By the time he reached his driveway, his phone was vibrating in his pocket. Missed calls, texts, a voicemail from an unknown number. Inside, the house felt too quiet. He set his keys down, washed his hands twice, then listened to the voicemail. "Hey, Daniel, you don't know me. I was at the light today. I recorded what happened. It's online now." His stomach dropped. He opened his phone, heart pounding, and searched his name. Nothing. Then he searched the street. The city? A headline popped up, shared thousands of times already. Road rage incident turns heated. Police intervene. The video autoplayed. Shaky footage. The red light. The pickup stopping short. Daniel's car framed tight. His voice sounded smaller than he remembered. "I don't want trouble." The clip cut before the pickup driver shouted. Cut before the officer ignored the truck. Cut before the search. What remained was Daniel stepping out of his car, hands raised, face tense. A caption scrolled beneath. "Driver becomes aggressive after being cut off." "That's not what happened," Daniel whispered. Comments flooded in, stacking faster than he could read. "Why didn't he just comply? Looks guilty to me. Always playing the victim. Good on the cop for keeping things calm." A few pushback. "Where's the rest of the video? Why wasn't the other driver stopped?" They were drowned out. Daniel's phone rang. It was his supervisor, Mark. "Hey, Dan," Mark said, voice careful. "You okay?" "I was detained," Daniel said. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I figured," Mark replied quickly. "Listen, HR saw the video. They just want to make sure there's no distraction at work. Maybe take a personal day or two." "A personal day," Daniel repeated. "Just until things settle," Mark said. "You know how optics are." After the call ended, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, phone in his hands, the video looping without sound. His daughter's backpack rested by the door, a cartoon rocket stitched on the front. He imagined her classmates repeating the words they'd seen online. By evening, local news picked it up. A panel of talking heads debated tone and compliance. No one asked why the pickup driver disappeared from the frame. No one mentioned the search. Daniel's wife, Renee, came home late. She watched the video once, then again, jaw tight. "They cut it," she said. "They cut it on purpose." "I know," Daniel said. "I don't know what to do." Renee took his hand. "We tell the truth." That night, Daniel posted a statement. Careful, factual, no accusations. He described the brake check, the insults, the search. He asked for full footage. The response was immediate. Damage control. Lawyered up already? Funny how everyone has a story. His inbox filled with strangers. Some offered support. Others offered threats disguised as advice. "You should be grateful you're alive. Don't make this worse." The next morning, another video surfaced. Longer, from a different angle. It showed the pickup driver stepping out, shouting. It showed the officer walking past the truck. It showed Daniel against the hood. For a moment, the comments shifted. Wait, why is he being searched? Why didn't the cop talk to the truck driver first? Then a counter-narrative rose, faster and louder. A former officer on TV shook his head. "We don't see what happened before the camera started. Context matters." Context mattered, just not Daniel's. A lawyer called by afternoon, then a reporter, then Internal Affairs left a message, voice smooth, promising to look into it. The pickup driver filed complaint, claiming Daniel had threatened him. The word assault appeared in print, uncharged but sticky. Daniel lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. He replayed the light, the horn, the smile. He wondered how many people would believe him if the system already had a story. Renee turned toward him in the dark. "We can't unsee this," she said softly. "They've chosen their version." Daniel closed his eyes. Outside, a car passed, tires whispering on asphalt. Somewhere online, his face froze mid-frame, reduced to a thumbnail, and Daniel understood that the road didn't end at the red light. It stretched forward, public and unforgiving, demanding something from him he hadn't planned to give. Internal Affairs scheduled the interview for a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks out. The email thanked Daniel for his cooperation and reminded him that the process required patience. Renee read it twice, then once more aloud, as if tone might change the meaning. "They're stalling," she said. Daniel nodded. "They're waiting for it to cool down." The office sat in a beige municipal building with frosted windows and a flag that snapped in the wind. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and copier toner. 2 investigators waited at a small table. One smiled, the other typed. "Mr. Carter," the woman said, "we understand this has been stressful." Daniel clasped his hands. "I want the full footage reviewed." "We'll get to that," the man said without looking up. "First, walk us through your emotional state." "My emotional state?" Daniel repeated. "At the time of the incident," the woman clarified. "Were you angry?" "No," Daniel said. "I was scared." The man typed. The woman nodded sympathetically. "Fear can look like aggression," she said gently. Daniel blinked. "Fear looks like compliance." They asked about his childhood, his job performance, whether he'd ever raised his voice in traffic. They asked why he cracked the window. They asked why he asked if he was detained. Each question felt like a small test. He was failing without knowing the rules. "Why didn't you simply remain silent?" the man asked. "I answered what I was asked," Daniel said. "Sometimes," the woman said, "answers escalate situations." They took a break. Through the glass, Daniel watched them talk, heads close, hands moving. When they returned, the woman folded her hands. "We've reviewed the officer's statement," she said. "He reports you were uncooperative." "That's not true," Daniel said. The video is one piece," the man said. "We consider the totality." "Does the totality include the pickup driver's insults?" Daniel asked. The woman's smile tightened. "We don't have corroboration for that." "I sent links," Daniel said. "There's footage." "We'll note your concern," the man said, typing. The meeting ended with assurances, a timeline without dates, a promise without edges. Daniel walked out feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. At work, his desk had been moved. Temporary, HR said, just until things resolve. He was removed from client-facing meetings. Emails slowed. Conversations ended when he entered the room. At home, Renee fielded calls. One night, a letter arrived from a law firm. The pickup driver was filing a civil complaint, alleging emotional distress and threats. "He's suing you," Renee said, voice flat. Daniel read the letter twice. "For what?" "For being there," she said. Their lawyer explained options. Respond. Counterclaim. Wait. Each came with costs, not all of them financial. Daniel signed papers with a steady hand that surprised him. A week later, the police union released a statement. It praised professionalism. It warned against trial by social media. The officer returned to duty. A photo appeared online, him smiling at a community event, arm around a child. Daniel's phone buzzed with messages. "See? Nothing happened. Why are you dragging this out?" At school pickup, a parent Daniel barely knew leaned close. "My husband says you should let it go," she whispered. "For your family." Daniel smiled politely. "We are letting it go," he said. "We're letting it go where it belongs." That night, a reporter called. She spoke quickly, like time was a currency she couldn't waste. "We're seeing a pattern," she said. Same officer. Similar stops. Settlements. Why hasn't anyone said this before? Daniel asked. They have, she said. Quietly. Internal Affairs emailed again. They'd completed a preliminary review. No policy violations found. Case closed. Renee slammed the laptop shut. Closed, she said, like it never happened. Daniel sat at the table, hands flat, feeling the grain of the wood. He thought of the light, the horn, the phrase that had landed like a verdict. People like you. He drafted a response he didn't send. He drafted another he deleted. Then he wrote one sentence and left it on the screen. I am not done. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, streaking the windows. Somewhere across town, an officer went home to dinner. Somewhere else, a pickup idled at a stoplight, engine rumbling. Daniel closed the laptop and stood. They think we'll get tired, he said. Renee nodded. They always do. He took a breath, feeling the weight of it settle, not resignation, but resolve. The ranks had closed, tight and practiced. To open them would take time, risk, and help. His phone buzzed again. The reporter's name glowed on the screen. Daniel, she said when he answered. Are you ready to go on a record? Daniel looked at Renee. She met his eyes. He nodded. Yes, he said. I am. The morning after Daniel agreed to go on the record, the house woke up before the sun. Renee moved quietly, packing lunches with deliberate care, as if order might hold the walls together. Daniel stood at the sink, coffee cooling in his mug, listening to the distant whine of traffic. The road never stopped. It just learned new ways to circle you. At school drop-off, whispers followed him down the hallway. Daniel felt eyes linger, then slide away. A teacher smiled too brightly. Another avoided him altogether. His daughter, Maya, tugged his sleeve. Why did that boy say you were on TV? She asked. Daniel knelt to her level. Sometimes grown-ups argue in public, he said. Sometimes people don't tell the whole story. Did you do something bad? The question landed softly and shattered anyway. No, Daniel said, steady. I did the right thing. At work, HR called him in. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. A poster on the wall read, We're all in this together. We've received inquiries. The HR manager said, fingers folded. Reporters. Clients. I haven't talked about work, Daniel said. We appreciate that, she replied. This is about perception. Until things resolve, we're placing you on paid administrative leave. Administrative leave, Daniel repeated. I haven't been charged with anything. It's not punitive, she said quickly. It's protective. For everyone. For everyone but him, Daniel thought and nodded. The interview aired that night. The reporter used Daniel's words carefully, set against timelines and records. She showed patterns, not just moments. She named policies and procedures, not just feelings. Daniel watched himself on screen, hands folded, voice measured, a stranger practicing restraint. The backlash came fast. Emails, comments, calls that hung up when he answered. A note slipped under their door. Stop making trouble. Renee found it first and threw it away without a word. Their lawyer called with updates. Motions filed. Responses due. Cost climbing. This is a squeeze, he said. They make it expensive to keep breathing. The pickup driver went on a radio show. He laughed, said he was a family man, said he'd been threatened. He didn't use slurs. He didn't have to. The host nodded along. At dinner, Maya pushed peas around her plate. My friend's dad says you hate cops, she said. Daniel set his fork down. I don't hate anyone, he said. I want rules to be fair. Maya considered this. Are rules always fair? No, Daniel said. That's why people speak up. Renee squeezed his hand under the table. 2 days later, the officer's body camera footage leaked. Partial, unflattering to no one who mattered. A union spokesperson dismissed it as misleading. Split seconds, he said. High-stress decisions. The reporter called again. We're getting pressure, she said. Editors want balance. Balance, Daniel said. Between what and what? Between your story and the department's, she said. even when one has more evidence. Daniel stared at the wall, where a calendar still showed plans he no longer had. Do what you can, he said. Renee met with a counselor from a community group. She came home quieter, eyes bright. They see this all the time, she said. Families breaking under the weight. Daniel thought of his parents, of lessons learned the hard way. We won't break, he said, not certain but determined. A fundraiser started online, then stalled. Support surged, then thinned. Attention moved on, as it always did, to newer outrages. Daniel learned the rhythm of it. Spike, plateau, fade. Internal Affairs reopened the case in light of new information. The email sounded apologetic without apologizing. A hearing was scheduled. This time, a date was attached. The night before, Daniel couldn't sleep. He paced the living room, stopping at the window, watching headlights sweep the street. He practiced answers he might never get to give. At the hearing, the room filled early. The officer sat with counsel, relaxed. The pickup driver sat behind him, nodding at familiar faces. Daniel took his seat beside Renee, shoulders squared. When Daniel spoke, he kept it simple. He described the light, the horn, the brake check, the words. He described the search, the seat, the click of the lock. He named the costs, work, peace, trust, without asking for pity. Questions came sharp and sideways. Why didn't you de-escalate? Why did you speak? Why now? Because silence didn't protect me, Daniel said. A murmur rippled through the room. Outside, cameras waited. Daniel stepped into the glare, heart pounding. He thought of Maya's question about fairness, of Renee's quiet resolve. A reporter asked, "What do you want to happen?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "I want the truth on the record," he said. "And I want the rules to mean the same thing for everyone." As he walked away, a man he didn't recognize touched his arm. "Keep going," the man said softly. "We're watching." Daniel nodded, feeling the pressure points shift, not gone, but changed. The squeeze was real. So was the ground beneath his feet. The reporter's name was Elena Brooks, and she spoke in questions that felt like doors opening. "Can you walk me through the stop again?" she asked, recorder on the table. Eyes steady. Slowly, they met in a quiet library room, glass walls frosting the world outside. Daniel described the horn, the brake check, the officer's path, passed the pickup to him. Elena nodded, occasionally stopping him to ask for times, for distances, for who stood where. She wasn't fishing for outrage. She was mapping terrain. "I've been pulling records," she said. "Stops by this officer. Complaints dismissed. Settlements sealed." "Sealed how?" Daniel asked. "Non-disclosure." Elena said. "Public money, private silence." She slid a folder across the table. Redacted pages. Patterns circled in pen. Same phrases, she said. Same standard procedure. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. "So, it's not just me?" "No," Elena said. "It rarely is." They coordinated releases carefully. First the data, then the story. Elena insisted on corroboration. Body cam logs, dispatch audio, timestamps. The pickup driver's timeline didn't hold. He claimed fear before contact. The radio showed the call after the brake check. Small gaps, fatal to credibility. The department responded with a statement about transparency. The union pushed back harder, accusing Elena of bias. Activist journalism. A spokesperson sneered on TV. Elena smiled thinly when Daniel relayed it. "If fact are activism," she said, "we're doing fine." The night the piece went live, Daniel sat with Renee on the couch, phones face down. They waited. The house ticked. At 9:02 p.m., Elena's message came through. "It's up." Daniel refreshed once. Then again. The headline didn't shout. It documented. Records revealed pattern in traffic stops. Oversight lacking. Comments were different this time. Slower. Curious. Questions replaced verdicts. Screenshots of documents circulated. Someone found an old settlement, the amount matching the redactions. At work, Mark emailed. "Saw the article," he wrote. "Let's talk." At school, a teacher stopped Renee. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for explaining." The pickup driver went quiet. His radio appearances stopped. His lawyer released a brief denial and nothing more. Online, his earlier claims were replayed against the records. The smirk froze, then cracked. Internal Affairs scheduled interviews with witnesses. The officer was placed on desk duty. Temporary, the department stressed. Daniel watched the phrasing, the careful softening. Progress with a cushion. The hearing reconvened with cameras in the room. Elena sat in the back, notebook open. The officer testified first, confident until the timelines appeared on the screen. The questions tightened. Why did you bypass the pickup? Officer safety. Yet you approached the other vehicle alone. Split-second judgment. Which second? The pickup driver followed. Under oath, his words tangled. He insisted Daniel yelled first. The dispatch audio contradicted him. His voice rose. The chair creaked as he shifted. Daniel's turn came last. He spoke plainly. He answered what was asked and nothing more. When he finished, the room felt emptied, like air after storm. Outside, Elena caught up to him. They're considering charges, she said, not just policy violations. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He felt relief and behind it, grief. None of this would return the hours lost, the nights awake, the look in Maya's eyes. At home, Maya showed him a drawing. A traffic light, green glowing. This one means go, she said. Daniel smiled. It does. The decision arrived 2 weeks later. The officer was charged with falsifying a report. The pickup driver faced penalties for false statements. The department announced reforms. Training, audits, a civilian review board with limited power. Limited, Daniel noted, but real. The news cycle surged, then steadied. Offers came, panels, interviews. Daniel declined most. He kept one to say what mattered. This isn't about one officer, he said on air. It's about systems that protect themselves. Sunlight changes that. Afterward, Mark called. We want you back, he said. Full duties. Thank you, Daniel said. I'll be there Monday. That night, Daniel and Renee sat on the porch. The street hummed. A car slowed at the sign, stopped fully, then went. Elena texted once more. They'll appeal. It won't be clean. Daniel typed back. It never is. He watched the road, feeling the old tension, then letting it pass. Discovery hadn't fixed everything. It had shifted the ground. Enough to stand, to keep standing, to see the light change and know when to move. The hearing room smelled like polish and nerves. Wood paneling climbed the walls, dark and official, designed to suggest permanence. Daniel took his seat beside Renee, shoulders squared, hands folded. Cameras lined the back wall, red lights blinking, patient as predators. The audience murmured, advocates, union members, a few neighbors who recognized him now and nodded like they'd always known. The chair called the session to order. The gavel struck once. Clean. Final. The department's attorney spoke first, voice smooth, outlining commitments to reform, emphasizing complexity. Words like context and training drifted through the room, softening edges. Daniel listened, jaw set. He'd learned the rhythm, acknowledge harm, deny intent, promise process. Elena sat 3 rows back, pen moving. When the officer took the stand again, he wore the same calm as before, but it didn't sit as easily. The attorney guided him through familiar ground. Experience. Split seconds. Safety. Why did you approach Mr. Carter's vehicle first? The board member asked. Based on my assessment, the officer said. He appeared agitated. What indicators? Another member asked. The officer hesitated. Tone. Body language. Specifics. The chair said. The officer described Daniel's raised voice. Elena leaned forward. The board member glanced at the screen as dispatch audio played. Daniel's voice emerged. Steady, quiet. I don't want trouble. The officer shifted. Stress can present inconsistently. The room stirred. Cross-examination tightened the frame. Timelines clicked into place. The attorney asked about the decision to detain without arrest, about the report language that mirrored earlier complaints. The officer's answers shortened. When the pickup driver was called, he walked with bravado that thinned under oath. He insisted he feared for his life. The attorney introduced a radio log. showing the call placed after the brake check. The driver's jaw worked. "Isn't it true," the attorney asked, "that you exited your vehicle first?" "I don't recall," the driver said. Video played. Boots hit asphalt. The driver's face reddened. "Isn't it true you shouted insults?" "I might have raised my voice," he said. "Traffic's loud." "Did you say, 'learn your place'?" Silence stretched. "I don't remember my exact words." The chair leaned forward. "Do you deny saying it?" The driver swallowed. "I deny any intent to offend." A murmur rippled. Intent again, like a shield. Daniel was called last. He stood, feeling the room settle. He spoke without flourish. He described the horn, the brake check, the smile without warmth. He described the pat down, the seat, the click of the lock. He named the costs without dramatizing them. "Why did you ask if you were detained?" A board member asked. "Because I needed to know my rights," Daniel said. "Because calm compliance didn't feel like protection." The chair nodded. "Thank you." Public comment followed. A woman spoke of her son, stopped 3 times in a month. A man spoke of being searched while the other driver waved and left. A union representative warned of demoralization. A pastor asked what safety meant if it wasn't shared. When the gavel struck again, the room exhaled. Deliberation stretched into hours. Cameras waited. Outside, Daniel paced, counting steps, then stopping himself. Renee handed him water. "Whatever happens," she said, "we did what we could." The board returned. The chair read the findings. Falsification substantiated. Policy violation sustained. Discipline recommended. Termination pending appeal. Referral to the prosecutor affirmed. For a moment, Daniel didn't hear the rest. The word termination rang, hollow and heavy. Applause broke out, then stilled under the gavel. Outside, microphones clustered. "How do you feel?" a reporter asked. Daniel chose his words. "Relieved," he said, "and aware of what it took." The pickup driver slipped past cameras. Head down. His lawyer announced an appeal. The department released a statement promising to learn. At home that night, Daniel sat at the table, the wood familiar under his palms. Maya brought him the drawing again, the green light. "Did you win?" she asked. "We made the road safer," Daniel said. "That's not the same thing. But it matters." He tucked her in, listening to her breathing even out. In the living room, Renee turned off the TV. "They'll keep fighting," she said. "I know," Daniel said. "So will we." He stepped onto the porch. The streetlight hummed. A car approached the sign, slowed, stopped fully. Another followed suit. Daniel watched the order, the pause, the choice. The ending hadn't shocked everyone yet, but it was coming quietly, inevitably, built from records and voices, and a refusal to let a single red light define a life. The day the verdict landed, the city felt smaller, sharper, more electric. News vans lined the curb outside Daniel's house. But he didn't go out. He let Renee answer the phone, filter emails, and sort the messages, some supportive, some venomous. He sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped, eyes tracing the lines in the wood, thinking about the months that had led here. Internal Affairs had completed its report. The officer who had detained him without cause was suspended immediately. A criminal investigation had been referred to the prosecutor's office for potential charges of falsifying reports. The pickup driver faced fines for providing false statements. His civil complaint dismissed. The public release of the records left his reputation in tatters. But Daniel felt no celebration. The victory was mechanical, procedural. The emotional cost, hours of anxiety, nights awake, the impact on Maya and Renee remained vivid, raw. Justice had been served, yet not without toll. At work, Mark met him in the lobby. "They're ready to reinstate you fully," he said. "Clients want you back on projects. HR cleared everything." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." The words felt inadequate. He had returned, yes, but the office still whispered. Some colleagues avoided him. Others observed him with cautious respect. The environment was different, subtly but unmistakably. He carried a quiet weight. At home, Maya drew another picture, this time a green light shining over a city street. "Daddy, it's safe now," she said, hopeful. It's safer, Daniel corrected gently. But you always watch the light, no matter what. Renee kissed his forehead. We made it through, she said. Together. Daniel went to the porch that evening, watching the street. Cars followed traffic laws more diligently than before, drivers more cautious. It was as if the red light, the one that had started everything, had marked a shift in the city's rhythm. But the world outside continued, indifferent to the individual struggle, and Daniel knew consequences didn't always equal redemption. He checked his phone, messages from supporters, journalists, and some strangers offering thanks for his courage. Elena's note blinked on the screen. The pattern is out. People are paying attention now. He typed back, "We'll see how long it lasts." The officer's suspension became permanent after the prosecutor charged him with falsifying official documents. The pickup driver paid fines and issued a public apology, though it was carefully worded and devoid of genuine remorse. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting Daniel's composure, his refusal to escalate, and systemic reforms prompted by the case. Daniel's story became a case study, how ordinary citizens could hold institutions accountable. Yet, the personal cost lingered. Renee noticed subtle signs, Daniel flinching at sirens, lingering mistrust when approaching intersections, tense pauses whenever a uniformed officer passed by. Maya asked questions that he struggled to answer fully. Each answer required a balance of truth and reassurance, honesty and protection. Daniel realized that while institutional consequences had been delivered, personal healing would take longer. The legal victories, the fines, the public acknowledgement, they were external. Inside, the tension, the trauma, the memory of the pickup driver's smirk, of the officer's dismissive gaze, still pulsed quietly. He and Renee discussed moving. A new neighborhood, new routines. But they decided against it. They would not run. Instead, they would live deliberately, teaching Maya how to navigate a world that wasn't always just. One afternoon, a community organization invited Daniel to speak at a town hall about citizen rights, encounters with law enforcement, and advocacy. He prepared, choosing words with care, drawing on the months of experience. He wanted people to understand the cost of silence, the value of evidence, and the power of standing firm. The day of the town hall, Daniel looked at the audience, parents, teenagers, neighbors, local officials, and spoke plainly. He told the story without embellishment, naming facts, actions, and consequences. He paused for questions, answered calmly, and felt the quiet acknowledgement of impact. He could not undo the past, but he could shape understanding. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel sat on the porch again. Lights flickered along the street, cars moving with routine obedience. He thought of the red light, the horn, the patrol car, the phone cameras, and the months of struggle. Justice had arrived, uneven and delayed, but undeniable. And while it had consequences for those who had caused harm, it also left indelible marks on him, reminders of vulnerability, resilience, and the cost of resistance. He inhaled, letting the evening air settle around him. The city was still imperfect, the system still flawed, but for now, at least he could breathe, and in that breathing, he found a fragile sense of closure. Daniel glanced at Renee and Maya inside, laughing over homework. The world outside their home remained unpredictable, but within these walls, they reclaimed a measure of safety, dignity, and hope. The consequences had landed for better or worse, but they had survived, and in surviving, they had discovered their own strength. The street outside glimmered in the soft amber glow of early evening. Daniel leaned against the porch railing, watching cars move along familiar routes. Each tire that hissed over wet pavement felt like a quiet testament to the passage of time. The red light at the intersection a few blocks away flickered and shifted, inconsequential to most, but Daniel noticed its cadence with precision, a symbol now of control and vulnerability entwined. Inside, the house hummed with life. Maya worked on her homework at the kitchen table, her pencil tapping softly against lined paper. Renee poured tea, glancing occasionally at Daniel, reading the subtle tension still etched into his shoulders. Despite the victories, the officer suspended, the pickup driver fined, the reforms underway, their home carried traces of the month's ordeal. They had survived the system, but it had left its mark. Daniel thought back to the day the horn blared, the brake check that almost ended everything, and the patrol car that had turned ordinary traffic into a crucible. That single red light had seemed small and inconsequential, but had exposed something deeper. A network of bias, of power misused, and of silence that allowed injustice to thrive. Now, months later, the consequences had fallen unevenly. Justice had been served in the public sense, but the emotional toll lingered, subtle and persistent. He moved into the living room and sat on the couch beside Renee. "I'm tired," he admitted, voice low. Not from physical exhaustion, but from the accumulation of vigilance. The constant awareness of how quickly calm could be misread, how quickly safety could shift. Renee rested her head against his shoulder. "We made it," she whispered. "That's something." "Yes," he said, but the acknowledgement felt incomplete. He remembered the pickup driver's smirk, the officer's dismissive tone, the feeling of being observed, judged, and misrepresented. Those memories had become a rhythm he could not ignore, like a heartbeat that ran too fast when he passed a police car or a crowded intersection. Maya interrupted with a question. "Daddy, are lights always fair?" He paused. The innocence in her voice cut sharply. "Not always," he admitted. "But knowing how to stop, wait, and act carefully, that's what keeps you safe." Her pencil scratched lightly across the paper. "I will," she said. Daniel nodded, comforted by the simplicity of her understanding, the clarity of her trust. It was a small but significant victory, teaching her how to navigate the world. The dangers and the nuances felt as urgent as the legal battles he had fought. Later that night, Daniel revisited the media coverage online, reports of the officer's termination, the driver's fines, and the systemic reviews filled the pages. Comments ranged from supportive to dismissive. Some praised his restraint. Others questioned whether the attention would last. He scrolled past the praise and the criticism alike, noting only the persistence of awareness it had sparked. Even temporary exposure mattered. The law, the media, the public discourse. They were tools, but not shields. Daniel knew that lessons had to be taught within walls, on streets, in conversations with his daughter, so the knowledge could outlast headlines. The systemic issues, the bias, the abuse of authority, remained, but Daniel had demonstrated that resistance and documentation could tilt scales, however slightly. He moved to the porch again, this time alone. The wind carried the faint smell of wet asphalt and rain-soaked grass. The red light still marked the intersection. A car approached and slowed, obeying the signals. Daniel's pulse, once taut with tension, found a measure of rhythm. The light changed to green. The car moved forward. He exhaled. The months of fear, frustration, and uncertainty had culminated not in unblemished peace, but in an understanding. Systems are fallible. People are inconsistent, and vigilance is a lifelong necessity. But he also recognized resilience, the kind that survives scrutiny, survives misrepresentation, survives the strain of watching loved ones face secondary harm because of your visibility. That resilience, he realized, was theirs now. The next morning, Daniel returned to work fully reinstated. Mark greeted him with a firm handshake. "Welcome back," he said. Clients waited for his input. Colleagues offered tentative smiles. Conversations resumed with cautious normalcy. The office hadn't changed entirely. Some whispered, some stared, but Daniel walked the halls with measured confidence. He had learned, in hard detail, the currency of attention, the necessity of records, and the weight of staying calm under fire. At home, Renee suggested a small celebration. Dinner at Maya's favorite diner. Ice cream afterward. Nothing grand but deliberate. They moved through the evening with intention, savoring the simple rhythms. Laughter, shared stories, the warmth of normalcy reclaimed. Later, after Maya slept, Daniel reflected in quiet solitude. He acknowledged the scars, emotional, mental, and relational, but also the victories. The exposure of wrongdoing, the attention brought to flawed systems, and the reclamation of dignity. The red light, once a trigger of fear, now symbolized awareness. Every intersection, every stop, every decision carried consequence, and Daniel understood that being attentive and resolute mattered. He thought of the future, continued advocacy, teaching Maya resilience, documenting events, speaking when silence might be misunderstood as compliance. He knew the road ahead would never be entirely safe or fair, but he felt prepared to navigate it. The porch light flickered. A car slowed at the corner, waited, then proceeded on green. Daniel smiled faintly. After the light, they moved forward, and that, he thought, was the point. To survive, to teach, to persist, and to act with quiet courage, no matter the color of the light. The night settled. Inside, the house hummed with warmth. Outside, the city pulsed an ordinary rhythm. Daniel stood, listening to the ordinary world around him, aware that even after victory, the work continued. Yet, for the first time since that red light, he felt a measure of peace. He had endured. He had survived. He had prevailed, measured, aware, and unbroken. And somewhere down the road, the red light would change again. But Daniel knew how to wait, how to act, and how to keep moving forward.